The road was too quiet, not peaceful, but dead. Mark had been biking for nearly an hour through the forest trail behind Quarry Lake, a path he hadn't touched in over 2 decades. At 43, he wasn't the same man who once raced through these woods. His breath came heavier, his knees ached, and life had worn him thin. A recent divorce, a job that drained the soul, and an ache in his chest he couldn't name had pushed him to seek solitude. But this silence, it was wrong. He hadn't told a soul where he was going. Packed his old mountain bike, a flashlight, and left early Saturday morning. At first it felt like nostalgia, a brief return to simpler times. But the deeper he rode, the more unnatural everything became. The forest felt alive, but not in a way that welcomed. Trees loomed overhead like silent judges. Sunlight struggled to pierce the canopy. It was as if something unseen hovered just out of view, holding its breath. He stopped to catch his breath. The trail was supposed to curve westward, yet what stretched ahead was unfamiliar, overgrown. Behind him, the trees seemed closer than before, almost rearranged. Mark frowned. Something in his gut twisted. "Just a wrong turn," he muttered, more to silence the rising panic than to explain the path. The incline ahead burned his legs, but curiosity pushed him forward. At the top, his breath caught. An old bike rested against a tree, rusted, frame warped, but unmistakable. It was the same model he'd owned in high school. Same faded red stripe, same worn grips, identical to the one stolen from his garage at 17. He moved toward it, unease crawling up his spine. The scratch on the left pedal, exactly where he remembered falling on gravel as a teen, was still there. His hand trembled as it brushed the seat. The air instantly felt colder, metallic. The sound of a bicycle bell echoed faintly through the trees, not playful, hollow, distant. "Hello?" His voice cracked. The woods gave no reply. The bell rang again, closer. Mark stepped back. A chill raced down his neck. He turned toward his own bike, threw himself onto it and pedaled. Fast, too fast. Behind him, he could hear it. Leaves crunching, tires turning. Something, or someone, was following. Branches lashed at his arms. Shadows darted between trees. He didn't dare look back. The bell rang again, shrill now, right behind him. He swerved sharply, narrowly avoiding a tree. The figure beside him came into view for just a second. Thin, white, eyes blank as bone. No pedaling, just gliding. Mark screamed and veered off the trail, crashing hard into a ditch. Pain tore through his leg. He scrambled to his feet, panic overriding pain. The forest was silent again. The bike, the rusted one, was gone. So was the figure. His phone had no signal, no map, no exit. The trees watched in silence. Twilight bled into the sky too early. Time had lost its rhythm. Mark limped along the trail, dragging his bike beside him. The trees now looked diseased, twisted and leaning inward. Then he saw it. A child's tricycle, rusted and decayed, placed deliberately in the center of the path. Another bell, but this time slower, sinister. He froze. The forest exhaled something heavy, like rot and rust. Behind him, the sound of breathing, wet, animalistic. He spun with the flashlight trembling, catching only mist. Then it stepped from the fog. The rider, the same ghostly face. Skin stretched too tight, eyes hollow and wet. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. The air pulsed with its presence. He ran. Pain surged up his leg, but he didn't stop. The forest blurred. Somewhere ahead, an old shack came into view, tilted, broken. He dove inside and slammed the door. Darkness swallowed him. Dust danced in his beam of light. Then, the bell, circling the shack. He held his breath. Something brushed the wall outside. Then a whisper seeped through the cracks. "Ride with me." Mark's skin prickled. Through a hole in the wood, he saw nothing, just trees. Still he knew. Waiting meant dying. He kicked open the back door and plunged into the dark. Branches ripped his shirt. Thorns scratched blood into his arms. The trail appeared again, winding, familiar, yet wrong. He followed it, heart pounding. Every direction felt the same, like a maze designed to trap. He collapsed near a moss-covered sign barely legible, Quarry Trail. And there it was again, the bike, red, clean, standing perfectly upright. This time, the seat wasn't rusted. The chain shimmered like new. His hand moved without thought. The forest had gone still. No wind, no birds, only the ticking of a chain ready to turn. "It's your turn," the voice whispered again. He mounted the bike, helpless to resist. The pedals turned smoothly, too smoothly. He didn't feel tired. He didn't feel anything. As he moved forward, the forest responded. Trees pulling back, trail parting like a wound reopening. Time bent, reality frayed. Every push of the pedal drew him deeper. He saw flashes between trees, others riding, lifeless, hollow-eyed. Some were children, some looked like him, all trapped, all pedaling endlessly. None spoke. Their silence screamed. Mark tried to stop. His hands shook on the brakes, but they didn't respond. The bike owned him now. He passed the same moss-covered sign again and again. He screamed, but no sound came. Only the bell. Always the bell. It rang with his breath, like a heartbeat outside his body. Then ahead, a clearing. Dozens of bikes, stacked like corpses, rusted, twisted. The figures circled them in slow robotic motion. The path ended there, or began again. Mark rode straight into the center. As he crossed the threshold, he felt it. The cold hand of something unseen wrap around his spine. He no longer knew who he was. Just another rider, part of the circuit. The bike beneath him gleamed as if fed by fear. He didn't sleep. He didn't hunger. He rode in circles, forever, bound to the trail, to the rusted chain, to the call of the bell. And if a stranger dared ride this path again, if someone from the outside wandered too deep, the forest would make room. The trail would shift. The air would still. And Mark would be waiting, just out of sight, pedaling, smiling. It started with a rusty bicycle chained to a streetlight near the entrance of the forest trail. Every morning, Tom passed by it during his jog before work. An old red Schwinn with torn leather on the seat and a bent front wheel. He never saw anyone ride it, and yet, every few days, the bike's position changed slightly. Once it leaned on the tree instead of the post. Another time, it faced the opposite direction. He chalked it up to wind or bored teenagers. But something about it always unsettled him. One Thursday morning, Tom stopped mid-jog. The bike was gone. In its place was a neatly folded newspaper from 1993, its pages yellowed and brittle. His eyes locked onto the black and white photo on the front. A young man with the same red schwinn, smiling. Headline: Local teen vanishes after bike ride. Search continues. A chill crawled down Tom's spine. He picked up the paper, hesitated, then stuffed it into his backpack, unsure whether to tell his wife or the police. Tom couldn't shake the image of the boy. That evening, he went online, searching the teen's name. Evan Booker. Dozens of archived articles surfaced. The 17-year-old disappeared while biking the same forest trail Tom jogged daily. His body was never found, but the bike, according to one article, was discovered weeks later, leaning against the very streetlight Tom had always seen it at. He brought the newspaper to the kitchen, laying it gently on the table. Karen, his wife, gave him a wary look. "What is this?" she asked. He told her everything: the paper, the bike, Evan. She laughed nervously. Maybe someone's playing a weird prank. But Tom didn't laugh. He couldn't. That night, he dreamed of the red Schwinn rolling toward him in the dark, creaking with every turn of its wheels. The next morning, the bike was back, right where it always had been. Only this time, it was cleaner. The rust was gone, the seat restitched, the bent wheel straightened. It looked brand new. Tom stood there stunned, his breath visible in the cold morning air. Then he noticed a note taped to the handlebars. "Ride with me." He laughed nervously at first, assuming again it was some local prank. But as he reached for the note, the bike's front wheel turned slightly toward him. Tom stumbled back. There was no wind, no slope, no reason it should move. He left the trail early, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Back home, he didn't mention it to Karen. She already thought he was too stressed from work. Maybe she was right. By Saturday, Tom couldn't take it anymore. He woke up before dawn and walked to the trail, flashlight in hand. The bike was still there, untouched. And again, a note. "Let's go back." Tom scanned the woods. Silence. Not even birds. He looked at the note again, then at the handlebars. Against his better judgment, he climbed onto the bike. The tires felt cold, but the seat oddly warm. The moment he gripped the bars, the headlight flicked on, though he hadn't touched it. It illuminated the trail ahead, now shrouded in thick mist. The forest seemed to breathe. The ride began slowly. Tom pedaled past familiar trees, now stranger in the morning fog. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became. He felt watched. Branches creaked above him, and shadows moved just beyond the beam of light. Then he heard it. Another bike. The sound of tires rolling behind him. He turned. Nothing. Just fog. He pushed harder, pedaling faster, heart thumping. But the faster he rode, the louder the other bike got. Breathing joined it. Then a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." Tom nearly fell off but kept going. His flashlight beam caught something ahead. Another rider. Or a figure. Still. Pale. Watching him. Tom swerved and crashed. He woke in the mud, ankle twisted, bike beside him, only now old and rusty again. His clothes were damp, his watch frozen at 6:13. The trail was silent. When he tried to stand, pain shot up his leg. Crawling, he pulled himself back toward the entrance, each branch clawing at his jacket. When he reached the streetlight, the sun was rising, but the bike, it was gone again. In its place, another note. "You can't leave now." Tom collapsed in the road, gasping, unsure how long he'd been gone. Karen found him hours later after alerting the local police. He was dehydrated and disoriented, repeating Evan Booker's name. The officers dismissed it as exhaustion and stress, but Tom knew what he saw. The ride wasn't just a ride, it was a passage. He spent days recovering, but sleep eluded him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the fog, the boy, the red Schwinn. He went to the local library and found old interviews. Evan's mother claiming she heard her son's voice in the woods for weeks after he vanished. Everyone had called her crazy. Tom didn't. One night, he drove past the trail again. The bike had returned. This time, there was no note, just a photo clipped to the front spokes. It showed Tom on the bike, from behind, riding into the mist. But he had no memory of that photo ever being taken. He burned it. But the next morning, it was on his kitchen table. Karen begged him to stay away. He promised he would. But something called him back, not just curiosity, but a pull, like gravity, like guilt. He wasn't sure if it was Evan or the forest itself, but he knew he had to go back for answers, for closure. On a cloudy Monday, he returned with a GoPro strapped to his chest, determined to record everything. The ride started like before. Fog thickened, the sounds changed. And then, midway down the trail, the footage went black. The police found the camera near the trail's edge, still recording. Last sound on tape, a bicycle bell, faint, then loud, then silence. They never found Tom, only the bike, polished, red, and waiting under the streetlight again, its front wheel slowly turning. Karen moved away a year later. She couldn't stand living so close to that place, but sometimes she swore she heard a bell in her dreams. On quiet nights, when wind passed through the trees, it almost sounded like wheels on gravel. And on the anniversary of Tom's disappearance, the old red Schwinn appeared in her front yard, clean, gleaming, and taped to the seat, a note. "Let's go back." It all started on a humid August evening in a sleepy town outside of Manchester. Robert Moore, a 45-year-old technician and avid cyclist, was returning from his usual evening ride through the countryside. He took the same path almost every night, a quiet trail that snaked behind an old, unused railway track. That night, however, something was off. The air felt heavier. The crickets were silent, and as he pedalled past the rusted railway sign, a strange metallic creak echoed behind him, despite the road being utterly empty. He slowed down and glanced over his shoulder. Nothing, just the dimming light and the outline of the hills in the distance. He shook it off, blaming his nerves and maybe a loose part on his bike. But when he turned back, he swore he saw a figure dart into the bushes just ahead. A flicker, thin, tall, with something glinting in the low light. Robert stopped his bike, his breath suddenly loud in his ears. "Hello," he called, trying not to sound as uneasy as he felt. No answer, but something about the stillness of the woods chilled him to his core. Determined not to let paranoia ruin his routine, Robert continued his ride. The trail grew narrower, swallowed by trees and shadows. The creaking noise returned, louder this time. It matched the rhythm of his pedaling, only slightly delayed, as if mimicking him. He came to a sudden stop. The noise stopped too. A full-body shiver rippled through him. He decided to inspect his bike. Everything looked fine. The chain, the gears, the tires. But as he bent down, he saw it. A trail of deep, fresh scratches along the side of his rear tire. They hadn't been there earlier, and they were too even, too deliberate to be accidental. His pulse quickened. He mounted the bike again, this time pedaling faster, now just wanting to get home. He never made it back that night. Robert's wife, Emma, called the police when he didn't return by midnight. The search began the next morning. They found his bicycle leaning against a tree at the edge of the trail. It was in perfect condition, except for one thing. The entire chain was missing, not broken, missing, as if it had been carefully removed, and etched into the tree behind it was a crude symbol. A circle with jagged spokes resembling a warped bicycle wheel. It was carved in deep. The investigators were baffled. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints, no evidence of an animal attack, just the bike and that haunting symbol. Emma couldn't explain it either. Robert had no enemies, no mental issues, and was deeply familiar with the trail. He would never just leave his bike, she said, her voice trembling. 2 days later, a hiker reported hearing a bicycle bell in the woods. It rang twice, clear and crisp, even though there was no one else around. Curious, he followed the sound. What he found chilled him to the bone. A fresh bicycle tire track, only one, leading in circles before abruptly stopping in a patch of dead grass. That same evening, Emma received a text message from Robert's number. It read, "I'm still riding." She stared at it, frozen. It was impossible. His phone had been found at home. The number was deactivated. The police traced the signal. It came from the middle of the trail, where he vanished. Local legends began to resurface. Old stories about a man known as the Peddler, a ghostly figure who roamed the forest on a rust-covered bicycle, dragging souls into the woods to ride with him forever. No one had taken those tales seriously, not until now. People started avoiding the trail. Even during the day, joggers and cyclists reported hearing chain rattles, bells ringing out of nowhere, or catching glimpses of a flickering wheel spinning in the distance. The town became quieter, more withdrawn. A sense of dread settled like fog over the community. Emma, desperate and consumed by grief, returned to the trail one morning at dawn. She carried Robert's old helmet and a photo of them together. She stood at the exact spot where his bike had been found and whispered, "I'm here." The silence stretched endlessly. Then, the soft chime of a bicycle bell answered her. Once, twice, then nothing. She turned around and saw it. Just for a moment, a figure on a bike far down the trail. The silhouette was unmistakable. It was Robert. But his posture was stiff, unnatural, and his eyes, she would never forget those eyes, hollow and still, locked onto her as he pedaled away and vanished into the woods. Emma screamed his name and ran after him, but no matter how far she went, the trail seemed to stretch endlessly. The trees began to twist unnaturally, leaning over her like watchers. She could hear tires behind her, even though she was running alone. And then, ahead of her, she saw it, the same warped symbol carved into every tree she passed. Panicking, she turned to run back, but the path behind her was gone. Just endless trees. The forest had swallowed the way out. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing, clutching the helmet. And then she heard his voice, gentle and distant, "Ride with me." Emma was found the next day by local search volunteers. She was barefoot, her clothes torn, wandering aimlessly near the main road. She had no memory of how she got there. When shown pictures of Robert, she broke into tears, but could only say one thing over and over. "He's still riding." She refused to leave town. Every evening she stood at the edge of the trail with his helmet in hand, waiting. Some said they saw two figures riding through the trees, one tall, one smaller, the sound of a creaking chain echoing behind them. Years passed. The trail was officially closed off after several other disappearances, but every once in a while, someone would ignore the warnings, and always they'd report the same thing before vanishing: a lone bicycle track circling through dead grass, a bell ringing with no rider in sight. Local teens dared each other to leave bikes chained up in the woods overnight. Most were found untouched, but one, an old red mountain bike, was discovered years later completely rusted through, except for the chain, which gleamed like new. Emma's house was eventually abandoned. Inside, her last journal entry was found. It read, "If I disappear, don't look for me. He's not alone anymore, and I wanted to ride with him. I had to." The entry ended there, but beneath it was drawn the symbol again. This time, perfectly round, balanced, like a completed wheel. They say if you listen closely on foggy nights, near the edge of that trail, you can still hear two chains creaking in rhythm.